Hi, and welcome to my full review of Bioshock 2. By full review, I mean I'll be discussing both the single player and multiplayer aspects of the game. Of course, I'll be concentrating mostly on the single player. Before I get into the review, I do want to mention a few things. First, as this is my first foray into the YouTube world, I recently started making these videos. I don't have too much experience with video editing. I don't have the type of extreme video editing software to do a bunch of crazy things around the screen. So if I tend to ramble at certain points during the video, there's not much I can do about that right now. But I do tend to take notes before I do the review, so hopefully there won't be too much rambling, kind of like I'm doing right now. Number two, I don't have any type of video capture device to capture gameplay footage for these reviews. Although it's my feeling that if I were to watch a game review, I'd rather not see any gameplay footage to avoid any spoilers of anything that I might see in the game if I decide to pick it up. But that's just me. So I'd like to know how you feel about that. Would you rather watch gameplay footage while I talk about the game, or would you rather hear about the game and then experience the full game for yourself if you decide to pick it up? Just let me know. Also, in my previous video, the unboxing of the special edition for Bioshock 2, I mentioned that I would be doing a first impression video for this game before the review. Well, as a precursor to how the rest of this review will go, I was not able to put the game down for enough time to put out a first impression video. On to the review. In my Mass Effect 2 review, I talked about my formula for creating a successful sequel, and it is thus. You take the first game, you add improvements to gameplay, you add new features, you put in a different story, and voila, you have a successful sequel. Well, for me, Mass Effect 2 didn't do it that well. They changed a whole lot, steered the game in a different direction altogether. Bioshock 2, on the other hand, they did it right. And let's talk about how they did that. First thing I want to talk about is the story. Now, I'm not going to be spoiling anything in this review in terms of the story. It's a large part of what makes Bioshock a fantastic game, both games. So, I won't be talking about the story in terms of spoilers. But Bioshock 1 introduced us to the underwater metropolis that is Rapture. If you have not played Bioshock 1, I highly recommend that you do so, simply because it's a fantastic game, and not because it's necessary to enjoy what Bioshock 2 has to offer. But some of the events and characters from Bioshock 1 are directly referenced in Bioshock 2 through both audio diaries and through messages that you receive from the characters that you're introduced to in the game. Bioshock 2 takes place roughly 8 years after the first game, or after the end of the events of the first game. Also, there is one character from Bioshock 1 that makes an appearance in Bioshock 2, briefly. I mentioned the audio diaries. This is the main storytelling element of both games. You find these diaries scattered about the world, and scattered about Rapture. Some of these audio diaries are from people that are not directly linked to the main story. They're interesting on their own. And then a lot of the audio diaries are linked directly to the main plot of the game. You also receive audio messages or broadcasts from people that you're introduced to in the game. And these are your interactions with them. It's not a discussion, it's not a conversation. The main character in this game, just like the first game, does not speak. Everybody basically speaks to you. To me, that's okay for Bioshock. I read a discussion a couple of weeks ago about a game writer who felt that main characters in video games who don't speak are considered, he or she considered them a cop-out or an annoyance. To me, that might be the case with certain games or certain genres of games. But with Bioshock, it provides a certain storytelling structure that allows this type of, I guess you could say, muteness to come across as not only fitting, but almost necessary. So again, I won't be going into the story. No spoilers here. Spoiler-free zone. But let's just say that 2K has developed a new way to pull you back into this underwater dystopia and have you care about why you're there and what it is that you're doing. Now, just like in the first game, the story bridges elements of many facets of life, such as science, mainly genetics, some engineering, philosophy, religion, psychology, sociology, metaphysics. So if you allow yourself to be enraptured by what's going on in the world, pun intended by the way, you'll have a great time, even when you're not firing a weapon. So let's talk about the gameplay. The game controls are pretty much exactly the same as the first game. Now, if you played Bioshock 1 recently, you'll have no problem jumping right into Bioshock 2 in terms of the controls. If you have not played the first game, or if it's been a while, it might take a few minutes to get used to the control scheme. The main way that both games differ from other first-person shooters is that instead of one main trigger for your gun, you have two triggers in Bioshock. So on your controller, your right trigger is for your weapons, your right bumper is to switch your weapons, and you have your left trigger for your plasmids, and your left bumper to change your plasmids. So with the addition of the extra main trigger, it adds a new bit of getting used to, but it really doesn't take that much time. The Y button is for jump, the A button is for interact, B for melee, X for reload. X should always be for reload. I can't stand it when shooters do not map the reload button to X. So, or square on your PlayStation 3 controller. So you, of course, use your arsenal to take down the enemies in the game who are called splicers. And most of the same splicers that you ran into from the first game, they return in Bioshock 2. You have your thuggish splicers. I always have a tough time with that one. And they will come at you with all types of melee weapons. They are melee combatants. You have your leadhead splicers, who will come at you with all types of weapons. Guns, machine guns, pistols, magnums, grenades, shotguns. You also have your spider splicers that can, now these are some tough guys. They can climb along walls, they throw hooks at you, they can jump at you from all sorts of angles, and before you know it, they're right up in your face. Of course, Big Daddies are back. There are a few new iterations of the Big Daddies, and it wouldn't be a sequel without new enemies. Now, there are a few new enemy types in the game that I will not discuss here. You will just have to come face to face with them for yourself. And how do you defeat these enemies? Well, of course, you defeat them with weapons and willpower. Now, when I say willpower, I'm not talking about willpower in the sense of strength of mind. I mean willpower in the sense that it's normally used in RPGs to describe some sort of stat related to magic. You don't have magic in this game, but what you have is pretty darn close. What you have are genetic mutations called plasmids. And the powers that you gain from using these plasmids are a big part of what separates Bioshock from every other first-person shooter. Not to mention the underwater city setting and the whole story-based thing. But I digress. I will talk more about the plasmids and other gameplay elements in part 2 because my time is running short on this video. So join me for that.